Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Hart, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm the chair of the Toronto Police Services Board. Welcome to this virtual meeting of our board. Although this meeting is being held virtually, we acknowledge that the land we're on as we hold this meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The board also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed by the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed by multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. Members, are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none and hearing none, I will move forward. I'll now turn the meeting over to Mr. Ryan Teschner, our Executive Director. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everyone who has joined this virtual meeting. Please note that this meeting, as always, is being live streamed on the Toronto Police Service YouTube account and will be available there at the conclusion of this meeting. On the line, we have Chair Jim Hart, Mayor John Tory, Councillor Michael Ford, Member Ainsworth Morgan, Member Lisa Kostakis, and Member Ann Morgan. Councillor Nunziata is unable to attend this meeting as she is attending another committee of council today. On the line, we also have members of our board office staff, Chief Raymer, his command team, members of the service, and of course, members of the public. We have individuals who have registered to make deputations on some of our agenda items. As with our regular meeting process, deputations will be heard prior to the item being discussed and voted on by board members. When it comes time to do a deputation, those who have registered will be brought into the call by our colleague, Du Buchanan-Gisser. As always, deputants will speak, followed by an opportunity for board members to ask them questions. Mr. Chair, back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Teschner. Before we begin today's meeting, many of you already know this, but I'd like to make a public statement. I'm very pleased to announce that Mr. Ryan Teschner, the board's Executive Director and Chief of Staff, was awarded the 2021 Canadian Association of Police Governance Award for Excellence in Police Governance for his extraordinary contributions to enhancing civilian oversight and governance in policing. Ryan, you've demonstrated genuine and dedicated commitment and leadership towards the enhancement of civilian police governance in Toronto, throughout Ontario, and indeed right across our country. Ryan, on behalf of the board, I'd like to congratulate you on this very significant achievement and well-deserved honor. Board members, would you like to make any comments? Feel free to do so now. Mayor Tory, and then Lisa, and then Ann.
I'll just say that I think that we are blessed with somebody who establishes an incredible degree of professionalism in terms of how the board is supported. I think, frankly, he's spoiling us a bit these days in terms of the support that we get. And congratulations on that recognition, because, you know, you're not the kind of person that seeks this out. But at the same time, when it happens, I think we should recognize that this is other people, peers and other people saying, you know, that we're blessed with an exceptional level of support from our executive director that, you know, I think we know. But so thank you and keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Brian.
Ms. Kostakis.
Good morning. I think I just echo the mayor's comments as well. And in the time that I've been on the board, I know the professionalism and just the brilliance of what comes out of, I guess, his thoughts and his head, and the way he can hone in and really clarify various situations, and his contribution and the leadership of the rest of the staff that the board has is just exemplary. So thank you so much for everything that you do for everyone, because it benefits our board, but also benefits our community as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kostakis. Ms. Morgan, did you want to say something? I saw your hand up.
Sorry. No, I actually was learning as a senior citizen how to work the reactions, and it was clapping hands. But
okay.
I've already given Ryan my kudos before, but I just want to, again, echo everyone's comments. But not only that, these are very challenging times, and it's it's Ryan as well as his team who, honestly, I can't even begin to believe other cities have the level and quality of the CEO and their board with and the type of professionalism and the input of the initiatives and the opinions and the materials. So kudos, Ryan. We're so far ahead of the game, and I'm really proud to work under you. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Councillor Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to jump into this as well. I know when I came on the board, probably about a year, no, not a year and a half, it's been a few years now. The advice and the leadership of Ryan, what I have seen, has been far above exemplary. And I learned that when I remember going out to Windsor to the OA or the OA PSB and conference. And I can tell you, I was, I shouldn't say I was surprised, but it's not just us in Toronto that holds him in high regards. It's, I know police organizations from across the province do as well. And I saw that firsthand. So we're very lucky to have him.
Thank you, Councillor Ford. I think that's it from board members. Ryan, to be fair, did you want to say a couple of quick words?
Very quickly, and I'm overwhelmed and very, very grateful. I'm grateful for Chair, you even thinking to nominate me for this award, and for the Canadian Association of Police Governance for bestowing upon me what I consider to be a shared honor, shared by all of the board members who are on this call, past board members who have contributed to this work, and certainly the small but mighty team that we have here at the board office who work tirelessly to seize opportunities to move the dial on police governance, but also by this chief and members of the service who come here every day and who have truly demonstrated an openness and a willingness to be committed to embracing the value and the promise that independent civilian police governance represents to our communities. I've said before that my professional work is bound up in who I am as a human being. I am the grandson of Holocaust survivors. My grandparents fled the Nazis and hid in bunkers and barns. And thankfully, they survived and they taught me a lot about life. But my commitment to these principles of independent civilian governance, to democratic institutions, I link that back to where I came from and who brought me up. And I get to do it every day with a fabulous team of board members, a fabulous team of staff here in the office, and a fabulous team with the chief command and service. I think there's no greater testament to our system of independent civilian governance than communities who are continuously willing, especially in these challenging times, those who are most impacted by policing and community safety concerns, to really come to the table and be our partners. It's a tribute to what we all do. It's the commitment all of us, board members, professional staff, chiefs, members of police services and communities, bring to how we do it. It's really all of us delivering on the promise, the pact that civilian governance represents to the communities we serve. And so thank you for this honor. Thank you for everybody for your kind words. Thank you for the team who stands with me every day to do this work. And I hope we continue to move the dial on such a significant democratic principle here in Toronto and right across Canada. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Ryan. Well said. Board members, I'll now move us through the agenda. Item number 1, confirmation of the minutes from the virtual public meeting held on September the 27th, 2021. Item 1 is held down for deputations. Item number 2, Community Partnership and Engagement Unit on F.O.C.U.S tables. We have a presentation on item number 2, so that is being held down. We have a written deputation on item number 2 from Nicole Corrado. I'd like to thank her for her written deputation. Item number 2 is held down for presentation. Item number 3, receipt of donations. We have a written deputation from Nicole Corrado. I thank her for that. Board members, would anyone like to move approval of item number 3? Mayor Tory, seconded by Ms. Kostakis. All in favor? Any opposed? Item number 3 carries. Item number 4 is senior officer uniform promotions. Can I have a motion to approve item number 4? Councillor Ford, can I have a seconder? Ms. Morgan, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 4 carries. Item number 5 is special constable appointments and reappointments October 2021. Can I have a motion to approve item number 5? Motion to approve. Councillor Ford, could I have a seconder? Mayor Tory, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 5 carries. Moving forward to item number 6, which is a semi-annual report publication of expenses, January the 1st to June 30th, 2021. We have deputations on item number 6, so that is being held down. Item number 7 is the Chief Administrative Investigation Reports. We have a series of those. We have a written deputation from Nicole Corrado. I'd like to thank her for her written deputation. Would anyone like to move item number 7 for receipt? Item number 7, Ms. Kostakis. Any seconders? Councillor Ford, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 7 carries. So we'll now move back to the top of the agenda. Oh, sorry, item number 8, one more item. Sorry, members. Item number 8 is correspondence regarding provincial funding. Can I have 8.1 and 8.2? Can I have a motion to receive 8.1 and 8.2? Motion to receive. Ms. Kostakis, a seconder. Ms. Morgan, all in favor. Any opposed? Item number 8 carries. Now we'll go back to the top of the agenda. So item number 1 is the confirmation of the minutes from the virtual public meeting held on September the 27th, 2021. We have 2 deputants. Do we put on the first deputant when you're ready?
Yes, Chair. 1 second. Derek, you should be receiving a prompt from the system now. Derek, if you can hear me, you need to unmute using *6. I'm not getting a response from Derek right now, so let's move on to Chris Langenfeld, and we'll get back to Derek later. Chris, please unmute now.
Hi, good morning, Derby.
Hi, Chris. Go ahead when you're ready.
All right, thank you. Good morning, board members. And I'll just say that not necessarily everybody in the public agrees with the how wonderful the board thinks itself or Mr. Teschner are. So I notice that's among you all. Anyways, going back to the minutes from last month, the confirmation from the September meeting, I note that the minutes here don't in fact accurately describe what happened, particularly in relation to item 1, which I spoke on last month, and the fact that I raised both a question regarding the justification for the increase of $1 million approvals on item 4 from the July meeting, and was asking for Mr. Teschner's or someone else's justification for how moving those items into secret is justified and how that creates greater transparency and greater accountability. And then, of course, there was the issue of Mr. Tory being a member of the Law Society at the same time as he's approving a reward to the Law Society. And, of course, that's, in fact, a violation of the Police Services Act Regulation 42197, Members of the Police Services Board Code of Conduct. One would think Mr. Hart would know that, but apparently instead he decided to hang up on me at Mr. Tory's request. Of course, item 10 of that board member code of conduct.
Mr. Langenfeld, I'm just going to hold your time for once.
I'm reading to you from the act that governs you, sir. Please let me speak and stop interrupting me.
I'm holding your time. You made a statement that Mr. Tory more or less directed me to cut you off, which is absolutely not the case. I'm chairing this meeting, and I'm the chair, and I make those decisions. So I just want to correct you on that. I stopped your time. Carry on.
I invite you to go back and watch the video then. You seem to be have some problems with reality, sir. Regardless, Section 10 of the Code of Conduct of Board Members says, board members shall not use their office to advance their interests or the interests of any person or organization with whom or with which they are associated. As I pointed out last month before you hung up on me, and Mr. Tory had his hissy fit about yet another conflict of interest, just like his mayoral position. This one, however, in the board, where he moved a motion to privately approve $1 million payments to lawyers, members of the Law Society, which Mr. Tory and Mr. Teschner are...
Mr. Langenfeld, you're way offside again, Mr. Langenfeld. I caution you, either have another line of comment or stop your comments right there, Mr. Langenfeld. Thank you.
Well, just for the record, for the review boards that govern Police Services Board, you are refusing to address and you consider an issue of a conflict of interest under the board's code of conduct for board members to be offside. That is typical, and that certainly exemplifies the Hart-Teschner-Tory Toronto Police Services Board. I go back again to the question which I've now raised twice in verbally and once in writing, which is what is the justification for secret payments to lawyers to govern the kind of police officers that, for example, let serial killer, what's his name, out to kill more people there previously. And the fact that, of course, I raised that and tried to have that brought as an item before the board, but once again, that was something that you and Mr. Teschner said that corruption or incompetence in the police disciplinary system is also not something that you're willing to address. And as long as you get a report that counts the number of people that were brought up before disciplinary hearings, that's something you're okay with. And of course, that's why, besides yourselves, the rest of the public have nothing but contempt for a lot of the folks on this board. Anyways, that's it. Good enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langenfeld. Any questions for Mr. Langenfeld? Seeing none, thank you. Doobie, please put on the next deputant.
Derek, should you receive a prompt from the system now? There you go.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I'm just going to start my timer here. I just want to say, by me speaking at this meeting, this shall not be deemed to be in any way my consent expressed or implied, and doing so is fraud. God bless Her Majesty the Queen, and long live Her Majesty the Queen. So I have an actual deputation to make. I appoint you, Chair Jim Hart, to act as the trustee for me in regards to any matters that involve the Toronto Police Services Board, barring any objections, of course. As I've heard Scott Duncan say, in trust law, one must always give time for objections. I also acknowledge and accept your oath of office, Chair Hart, you took to be a member of this board. And if you notice in my written presentation, I provide a screenshot of that oath from the Police Services Act, which ends in the last sentence, so help me God. And by the way, Chair Hart, Chris Langenfeld last month was guiding himself accordingly, as he was exercising this little-known concept called his freedom of expression. And when I say little-known, I only mean that it's little-known to this board, considering how many times over the years the Toronto Police Services Board has violated someone's freedom of expression. And don't take my word for it. Just ask Desmond Cole, who got arrested by exercising his freedom of expression a few years ago. So in the minutes it says, the following draft minutes of the meeting of the Toronto Police Services Board that was held virtually on September 27th, 2021 are subject to approval at its next regularly scheduled meeting. Considering what happened here last month, and considering what just happened to Chris Langenfeld once again previously, just before I spoke, I feel the need to inform you, Chair Hart, that in Bracken versus the Town of Fort Erie, 2017, the Court of Appeal for Ontario said that democracy depends upon the free and open debate of public issues and the freedom to criticize the rich, the powerful, and those who exercise power and authority in our society. Debate on matters of public interest will often be heated, and criticism will often carry a sting, and yet open discussion is the lifeblood of our democracy. You know, like Ryan was talking about, like democracy and democratic institutions and all that stuff earlier. So if Mayor Tory doesn't like what Chris Langenfeld had to say about him and Andy Pringle last month, then they should either sue Chris for hurting their feelings, or Mayor Tory should just finally resign from this board, which would allow him more time to concentrate helping Martha Rogers mediate family squabbles. Well, I would like to talk mostly about what Diana did in omitting my written presentations last month from the minutes. And I just want to make it clear that I object to what she did. I'm still confused over what happened last month during this item. I know it wasn't Doobie's intent, but technically you got him, Chair Hart, to violate Chris Langenfeld's freedom of expression by hanging up on Chris as a result of a point of order made by Mayor Tory. A point of order surrounding Chris's comments regarding payments by this board to law firms made in secret. Yet nowhere does Mayor Tory's point of order last month actually show up recorded in the meeting's minutes. On top of that, it should be noted, this board's administrator also just happens to be a member of the Law Society. What I find so outrageous with what you did to Chris, Chair Hart, last month and just now, was Mayor Tory's point of order, he said, of Chris Langenfeld's comments. I have no connection to that law firm whatsoever. Yet there's an article about Mayor Tory on the internet by the Financial Post. It's titled The Mayor of Bay Street. In it, there's a quote. He once ran the venerable law firm Tory's LLP that bears the family name. So just to be clear, Mayor Tory has no connection to that law firm whatsoever, except for the whole, he once ran that venerable law firm and it just happens to bear his family's name. Other than that, Mayor Tory has no connection whatsoever to that law firm. So not only did we not get an answer to Chris's questions about how much of the public's money this board has paid out to law firms in secret, it's Chris who gets hung up on while Mayor Tory gets away scot-Duncan-free, blatantly lying about his connection to Tory's LLP. So based on Chris Langenfeld's comments last month, objection, how much of the public's money has this board paid out to law firms in secrecy? And that's my time.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Any questions of Derek? Seeing none, thanks for your deputation. I'll now take this item into the board's hands, the confirmation of the minutes from the virtual public meeting held on September 27th, 2021. Would someone like to move approval of the minutes? Ms. Morgan, a seconder. Ms. Kostakis, all in favor. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We'll now move forward to item number 2, which is Community Partnership and Engagement Unit on focus tables. And I believe we have a presentation from Deputy Yuen. Chief Raymer, did you want to say anything first?
No, Chair, that's good. Thanks. Over to you, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Thank you for allowing myself and Detective Brian Smith to speak to each and every one of you on the great work and current status of Focus Toronto. As many of you have heard from us before, we started our first table in 2013, and Lisa Kostakis very well knows this Rexdale, Focus Rexdale. Along the way, we have now expanded to 6 focus tables covering 13 Toronto Police divisions. The work is not stopping. We'll continue to expand and to enhance our program. Now I'm going to turn it over, the presentation over to Detective Brian Smith, who is the service focus coordinator from us, Community Partnership Engagement. And Brian will take you through a series of PowerPoints to highlight some of the great work and some of the opportunities we may have with Focus as we move forward. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Deputy. Good morning, Chair, board members, Chief Raymer. I'm going to do a quick presentation. I'm going to go very quick. There's a lot of information about F.O.C.U.S. Yeah, you're going to have to click for me. Didn't work.
Yes.
Screen, if you're okay. So F.O.C.U.S is just an acronym for Furthering Our Communities Uniting Services. As the deputy stated, we started this in 2013 with the Rexdale pilot table. That was very successful. Further expansion in 2016 into Scarborough, downtown east and downtown west. Additional expansion in 2019 into the Black Creek community, and now 2021, further expansion into Scarborough. As well as the Tobago, and a brand new table in York. So there's been a lot of work done. We're now at 154 community agencies that are meeting weekly at 6 tables. So F.O.C.U.S operates in the risk intervention space. So this is the community safety wellbeing model for the province of Ontario. Other jurisdictions and countries would refer to this as the public health approach to community safety wellbeing. So F.O.C.U.S operates in that risk intervention space. So we're trying to prevent the incident response and pushing things away from the center. But being that the Toronto Police is a response agency and it does respond to 911 calls in crisis, the Toronto Police is able to at those incident responses to kind of leverage that to do additional risk intervention, thereby preventing further incident responses in the future. So this is the map of F.O.C.U.S right now. Now we follow police divisions just for the simplicity that police tend to bring the most situations to the table. So if you think about all the 154 agencies, they all have different catchment areas, but we just found it very simple to have the police divisions as the catchment areas, and each table certainly has a catchment area, and all the agencies that work at that specific table agree to service that catchment area. So in 2021, we've included 41 division, 32 division, and 22 division, as well as a brand new table that we just launched in 12 and 13 called Focus York. So here's a list of the membership. Had to probably go down to about a font of 3 to fit them all on the page. You can see we have all the sectors represented across the city. Some agencies may sit at all tables, some agencies may just sit at 1 or 2. It all depends what their geographic catchment area is and what obviously they have the capacity to be able to do. This is a zero budget model. There is no direct funding to F.O.C.U.S. All of these agencies use existing resources to come together to benefit their clients and service delivery across the city. The only direct funding would come from the United Way, which funds 1.5 positions to kind of offer that backbone support, administrative and management of the tables. So a F.O.C.U.S table meeting is unlike any meeting that most people have ever been to in their life. It's a very structured meeting. The process is co-chaired by a City of Toronto employee and a Toronto Police employee working together as a team. And hours of preparation go into each meeting, as well as hours of work afterwards. But the actual meeting proper is very structured. There is no case management done at the table proper. The sole purpose of the table is to bring a situation forward, identify what the risks are, and what agencies can respond. So as you can see here, this little visual here, through this structured process, agencies are identified to be able to respond to the situation. They then meet after the meeting in what we call the huddle, and at that point in time, they share the identifying information. This is a very privacy protected model. They share that identifying information then to be able to proceed to the intervention, which preferably is within 24 to 48 hours in a door knock. So what comes to the table, we classify as acutely elevated risk. If you think about all those 154 agencies, they all have various mandates. They all have various ways that people access their services. So what comes to a table is, let's say we had a mental health agency. Let's say they have a client that only requires mental health supports. Well, that's what they do. But let's say that client now also has additional risk factors that are now present. Let's say there's addictions. Let's say there's housing issues. There's family. There's other issues as well. That mental health agency would then bring that situation, the story, not the individual, to the table to get the help of the broader group. right? So that we call that criteria of what can come to the table, acutely elevated risk. And that's important as well, because that triggers the clauses in all of our privacy legislation of imminent risk. We are allowed to share information to prevent imminent risk and harm, crisis, and victimization. So a quick review of some statistics. So this is our 2020 stats. So 683 total situations across all the tables. You'll see our success rate is 80%. Now we track our success rate by, as I mentioned, the purpose of the table is to connect the individual and the family to the services that they need to reduce those risks. So 80% is our success rate. And, 80% is tracked by, on average at the 3-week point, those agencies in the intervention team are coming back to the table and saying, you can close that situation. The individual or family, what have you, has been connected to services, and we're confident that the risks are being reduced. In other words, it's working. So that's how we track our success. So you'll see the originating sector in 2020, 64%. That's the justice category. The police are about 62 out of that 64%. Police bring the most to the table because we are 24/7. We're in the crisis response business. We respond to those 911 calls. And at those 911 calls, those frontline officers are seeing are seeing what the risk factors are and are seeing a greater need that can be supported by other sectors and systems within the city. And then they're making those referrals to the designate at each station. At each focus station has a focus rep. They're making the referral to that focus rep, who then decides if it meets the criteria and if it can come to the table. And then you see on the responding sector, very equal response across the city. Police are still participate in some responses, maybe because police have the best rapport. So who better to be at that door knock as the police officer who has a good rapport with that family to then introduce them to the partner. Sometimes the person is experiencing homelessness, so the police officer, police can be part of the intervention only so much as to help locate the individual. Sometimes police are forced to do case management because no other system and sector can do the case management. Those are basically the main reasons. And then I guess the other main reason, sometimes there is a public safety concern and none of the partners want to engage at least at the onset without police with them. So some overview of the TPS stats. We're expected to surpass 1,000 situations this year. So if you remember, 2020 was 683. So it has been very busy. All the tables are doing well. Again, 80% success rate as tracked by the agencies saying that they've made those connections and the risks are being reduced. And F.O.C.U.S has been leveraged. It's very versatile and nimble. Collaboration. For instance, at the beginning of the pandemic, the Toronto Police noticed that risks were increasing because with most agencies, now closed, a lot of clients could no longer connect with their agency. They couldn't go visit their drop-in center, so to speak. So the Community Partnership Engagement Unit reached out to TELUS and formed a partnership with TELUS, and we were able to secure thousands of cell phones and data plans, which we then distributed through F.O.C.U.S to all the agencies so that they could then pass along to their high-risk clients so that those clients could then connect with the agencies. We also leveraged F.O.C.U.S at the start of the pandemic by offering additional training to all our partners, so to help them navigate this brand new environment of how to operate during a lockdown. So throughout 2021, TPS is now trending to over 70% of the situations to the F.O.C.U.S tables. And we do a lot of work within our stations to build that culture of risk mitigation, and for those frontline officers and the detectives to be able to identify those situations that might be suitable for risk mitigation, so that we can then refer to the table. And the last point's pretty important as well. So though, the police rep, F.O.C.U.S rep at a division or at the Community Partnership Engagement Unit may identify a situation to bring to the table, many situations do not meet that criteria. They only need the assistance of one agency. So then that officer then will reach out to that single agency because they know the person from F.O.C.U.S, and then we'll pass that along as a direct referral. And at some of our tables, those direct referrals now are exceeding the acutely elevated ones that we bring to the F.O.C.U.S tables. So very much a good news story there. So here we serve all ages genders, top services mobilized, of course, mental health. Over 70% of the situations have mental health as a risk factor. On average, there's usually about 6 risk factors per situation. Overall, the top risks in 2020, study flags as well. So again, on average, there is going to be 6 risk factors per each situation, with mental health over 70% of the time. This is just further, highlights of how age and risks of what we're seeing at our situations. Again, mental health is the #1 risk factor in all age categories except over 8. And getting almost to the last slide, this is the research. Research has been researched in Canada dozens of times, if not hundreds of times. There's 2 models in our country, the Prince Albert Hub and the F.O.C.U.S Toronto model. The F.O.C.U.S Toronto model is now the standard in the province of Ontario, endorsed by the Privacy Commissioner, as well as the province of Ontario. And if you notice the last statistic there from research from Dr. Sarah Thompson, criminologist at Ryerson University, from police data and comparing our Toronto Police data with our F.O.C.U.S data, when the Toronto Police are able to bring a situation to a F.O.C.U.S table, there will on average be a 68.75% reduction in police contacts post-F.O.C.U.S. And that was tracked during the 3-year follow-up period. So this model works. There is no other large jurisdiction in North America doing anything close to what we're doing at this level. Many jurisdictions have tried to do this and have not been successful. Though there are many tables in the province and in the country, there are a lot of tables with a lot of difficulties. So, but we've been very successful in Toronto. Credit to all of the membership, and so far we're healthy and vibrant, and we're doing the best we can. And just an overview of how we're structured. Certainly we have a steering committee, representatives of each agency. I'm on the coordination team, so I work very closely with my colleague from the city and the United Way. And here's our teams. On the city side is social development, finance, administration. And then on the police side, it's community partnership, engagement unit. And of course, each focus division, all over 13 divisions, as well as the sex crime, human trafficking unit, and the get the other unit now, also would have representatives that will help participate at the tables if they have a situation. Thank you.
Members of the board, that's the presentation on F.O.C.U.S, current status, and we'll take any questions if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board members, questions? Mr. Morgan first.
Thank you, Chair. Again, thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question. I just wanted to maybe understand how there is the specific approach to sort of the gun violence and just the overall community violence, but more specifically around the gun violence in the community. How is that being addressed with F.O.C.U.S Toronto?
Brian, you want to speak to that?
Sure. As you can see from the age categories on our statistics, youth between the age of 12 to 29, and many of our agencies classify youth up to 29, are at least 30% of our clientele. So we are connected with, certainly with Engage 416. On the city side, we're engaged, we're connected with the soon to launch Towards Peace. And, certainly with whether the police or any agency have a youth that is on a pathway to violence and he needs additional supports. We get a lot of those referrals. So whether it's a direct referral to an agency, to help that youth and divert them onto a better pathway, or it's something more acute, then we can bring it right to a F.O.C.U.S table. And if it's required, we can also, send it to Engage 416, because they're dealing with the hardcore gang exit ones where there are a lot of safety concerns. And sometimes in those situations, the F.O.C.U.S table may not be the best suitable mechanism to assist.
Thank you for that. I just wanted, I wasn't sure, just wanted to be clear in terms of if there's some statistics around that can sort of demonstrate how that's being implemented and the outcomes of some of those pieces. So if that's possible, I'd appreciate sort of getting some of the stats around that.
Yeah, I'll get you what I can. The issue with the post tracking is, we close it at the table when the connections have been made. And then after that point, the only way to learn more is to actually to breach the privacy and confidentiality legislation. So it is very difficult for us to track those outcomes long term. Certainly the agencies that are connected are, they know what those outcomes are. But for the police to then ask an agency to reach out to a client a year down the road is breaching privacy. So that's why it's kind of difficult to really get some fulsome statistics, along that lines. And the researchers, they have the same challenges. That's why we did the data analysis with Ryerson and Dr. Thompson, because we didn't actually have to talk to an individual. We let the data speak for that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I know it's always very difficult to be able to collect data in that respect. So I think it's really just about how do we design a tool that allows us to be able to access that very important information. But I appreciate the presentation and the input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morgan?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Yuen and Brian as well for your presentation, and very impressed with the data. The fact the recidivism is so low after contact at least means in one area where you're succeeding. I just wanted to ask, has any other large urban centers, like in the north, for example, like Thunder Bay or Kenora, or communities that have their own issues, have they approached you with respect to perhaps creating a model like yours that meets the needs of their own cities? Because it seems like it's wonderful work, and it's certainly what we always hear from the public in terms of their demands to let's nip some of these situations in the bud before they get people end up in serious trouble. So I just wondered about that, and thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, there's over 100 tables in Ontario now. Certainly, F.O.C.U.S Rexdale was the second in Canada. So this model has spread like wildfire in Ontario. You mentioned Thunder Bay. I mean, there was a situation where a client at one of our tables was moving to Thunder Bay to be back with her family. So I was able to pick up the phone and call the police lead at the table in Thunder Bay and help ease that transition for that person when they move back home.
Well, thank you, and I hope it continues to grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, board members? Questions? Tori.
Chair, I just wanted to say, how deeply I believe in this program. I had the chance, I don't know other board members who might have, I think there are probably at least a couple, to actually go and sit in one of these meetings and watch this work that is done, and to see the collaboration that goes on, and to hear, for example, that it wasn't something that became one of these big cost programs where we had to allocate, whether it's we or anybody else, millions of dollars to get these people to sit at the table together. I think indicates, first of all, the level of public service and deep commitment and compassion for people who are struggling in one way or another by all the people sitting around that table, and the genuine desire they had to collaborate. I mean, to watch the collaboration was extraordinary. To watch it being applied to individual people. I mean, you'd think in a city of 3 million people that it's almost impossible anymore to sort of have a table full of all those people with all of their different responsibilities and expertise, talking about a single person and how you could help them to get back on their feet and to stay on the right side and to have opportunity and to address some of their special challenges. But it happens at these tables, and it's extraordinary to watch, and it's extraordinary to know that it's going on. And I'm just very grateful to the people who sit around there, who do this work day in and day out when they're not sitting at focus tables, but who sit there and address a very specific group of people with, and the great thing about it is we can measure success, as has been presented to us today in the context of things like the recidivism. So I just want to say how strongly I believe and how glad I am that the police are very much a partner in that, and that I hope we can continue to expand that program so that Toronto continues to be a leader in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. Ms. Kostakis.
Thank you. Just more comments than a question. I think we're at that stage. I was waiting my turn to see that it was more comments than that, but also to address just a couple comments that were made. Being one of we call ourselves founders at times of the Rexall Focus Table, and having the privilege to have visited the Prince Albert location in Saskatoon in 2012, 2013. And I think the differences and some of the challenges that may come with the tracking of the post that Mr. Ainsworth was referring to is the individual capacity too of the agencies, because the situation table is where it goes to the table in the confidentiality piece. It does not become a caseload. It becomes a caseload once an agency takes a lead and takes over of that client's additional needs, because they are multifaceted from the initial sort of crises that brings them to the table. And I think we are still in discussions as agencies as well. Many of the agencies are still in discussions in being able to track that, where some of the youth, etc., end up. Do they take this road? Do they take back? Do they come back to the situation table? And those are some of the challenges that we have. However, the successes outweigh those types of challenges, because a lot that we were hearing from the community and continue to hear from the community is police involvement in situations such as these that don't necessarily require the police on a long-term level. But a lot of anyone in crisis, usually the police are the first point of contact. But this type of table has created a lot of those relationships and knowledge and partnerships within the community, where social service agencies and other experts within I guess our communities are able to help and assist people on a long-term basis to deviate from the risks in their lives as they move forward. And the police involvement.
Thank you. I think we lost you, Ms. Kostakis. Are you still there?
Factors of this program, and is something I think that we need to
I think Ms. Kostakis has frozen. I think we got the gist of your comments. Thank you very much. Board members, anyone else wish to speak to this item? I'll just wrap it up very quickly. First of all, I thought it was a terrific presentation, and you know, some of the comments.
Did I come offline for a while?
Yeah, you've been off for a while.
I've been talking for a while, so I was able to hear myself. I apologize for that. So I don't even know, where did I stop? I think I was just commending. I'll just finish off by saying I think it's a really crucial program that shows that we are listening to our communities, that we are all working together, and that the police TPS actually brought this initiative to the table, to the agencies, to United Way, to the city, and working collaboratively in order to serve our communities, where it is, even though the police are the first point of contact, they are not the last. And the direct referrals that Brian was talking about to agencies outside of the weekly meeting, so people are not waiting until the following Wednesday or whatnot. When the meeting happens, those relationships with those multidisciplinary tables and those the diversity of those agencies, and the police bringing clients actually to agencies directly and referring them is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal approach, and it helps our clients and our community members in huge. The impact is huge. So I commend you for that, and continue the growth. I obviously have an invested, I guess, feeling for this table and the great work that's happening at those tables for our communities. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Kostakis. I'll just wrap it up very quickly. I thought the presentation was terrific. You know, some of the things that are highlights for me is the leadership role that the TPS is taking at these tables, the social work that TPS officers are doing on a daily basis that I think the public never hears enough of. Terrific to hear that. your comments that many individuals are looking for connections with other agencies, but they're so comfortable with TPS officers, they want the officer to make the connection with the family to other agencies. Those are things that I think you have to reiterate as often as you can, because they're so key in the work that you do each and every day that the public isn't always aware of. I think that was terrific. I'd just like to pick up very quickly on something Mr. Morgan said, and that is around long-term success. I understand the challenges you have around access to information, but always with social programs, one of the challenges always is in measuring success. And I think the more dialogue you can have and how you can measure long-term success for these individuals, the more profound statements that you can make around the great work that you do each and every day. So getting people reconnected with society and seeing the long-term success for individuals and for their families, I think is a wonderful thing to try to measure. So just picking up on what Mr. Morgan said, I think anything you can do to achieve that would be terrific. And again, thank you for a wonderful presentation. It's great to hear about the great work of the TPS, especially in this area. So thank you very much. Members, I'll now bring this item into the board. Can I have a motion to receive the presentation from the TPS? Ms. Morgan, a seconder? Mayor Tory, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 2 carries. Thank you very much. It was terrific. We'll now move forward to item number 6, which is a semi-annual report publication of expenses, January the 1st to June 30th, 2021. And we have 3 deputants, I believe. Doobie, when you're ready.
There. Derek, you should receive a prompt now.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I'm just going to start my timer. So in this report, it says January 28th, $52.92 was expensed of the public's money by Law Society member Marianne Wright for an Ontario Bar Association webcast on vaccination requirements and other pandemic-related issues in the workplace. Forced vaccination is unlawful, so I don't know what Marianne Wright learned for that $52.92. But regarding the mandatory vaccination policy of the Toronto Police, this is from Greater Vancouver Transportation Authority versus Canadian Federation of Students, 2009, where the Supreme Court of Canada said that no matter how broadly the word law is defined for the purposes of Section 1, a policy that is administrative in nature does not fall within the definition because it is not intended to be a legal basis for government action. And as I mentioned to Mayor Tory at Executive Committee yesterday, as an alternative to firing people at the TPS, in my written presentation, I have a link to the Brownstone Institute from its website, brownstone.org, which has an article from epidemiologist Dr. Paul Elias Alexander titled, 91 research studies affirm naturally acquired immunity to COVID-19 documented, linked, and quoted. Isn't this the point where it occurs to Interim Chief Raymer to insist that Dr. Davila show him the peer-reviewed study that says the COVID vaccines are more effective than naturally acquired immunity? Or has everyone just forgotten that we have an immune system to begin with? This is from Lapierre versus Attorney General of Quebec, 1985, where the Supreme Court of Canada said, the unavoidable risk of an accident resulting in death or serious injury, which is occasioned by a compulsory vaccination, has only been an undisputed scientific fact for a short time, and though very rare, this risk is still proportionately not widely known. This is from Duplessis versus Canada 2000, where the Federal Court of Canada said, in the standing court-martial of ex-Sergeant Kipling, chief military judge found that the forced vaccination program did violate Section 7 of the Charter, in that the accused's right to life, liberty, and security of the person was infringed. page 2 of the minutes of the proceedings of the standing court-martial, the judge said that non-consensual vaccination under the threat of disciplinary proceedings amounts to an invasion of the bodily integrity and personal autonomy of a person. This is from Ellis Don Construction versus Laborers International Union of North America, Local 183, 2021, where I found on Canley Labor Arbitration Awards. In St. Michael's Hospital, arbitrator Kaplan characterized the evidentiary burden on an employer seeking to justify a mandatory vaccine or mask policy as follows. VOM, vaccine or mask policy, cannot be upheld simply because it is supported by good faith and some evidence. The risk of or danger associated with COVID-19 transmission in the workplace ought not to be accepted as justification of a compulsory rapid testing protocol, absent clear and compelling evidence that there is a specific problem in the context of this specific workplace which cannot be addressed through less intrusive means. This is from R versus Morgenthaler, 1988, where the Supreme Court of Canada said, at common law, for example, any medical procedure carried out on a person without that person's consent is an assault. And there's in my written presentation, I provide the link to a website from the Government of Canada titled Canadian National Report on Immunization, 1996, where it says, unlike some countries, immunization is not mandatory in Canada. It cannot be made mandatory because of the Canadian Constitution. And at this point, someone needs to question whether or not interim Chief Raymer is violating his oath of office he took to uphold the Constitution by instituting these mandatory vaccination policy. And that's my time.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions of Derek? Seeing none, Doobie, can you put on the next deputant? Thank you, Derek.
Yes, sir. Adam Golding should receive a prompt from the system now.
Oh, am I on?
Yes, you are. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, sorry, I thought I was deputy at number 3. So I originally thought this item was about the overall budget, although my remarks are pretty much the same because they're about how to democratize expenditures in general for the police. You know, let's say I'm an educated layperson who studies the news media in my spare time. And so, like you, I've heard a lot of the debate about defunding the police, et cetera, which is, of course, one of the many polarized topics that we have in modern discourse. It's a bit all or nothing, and I'm sure you all know better than anyone how unrealistic that proposal is. And, you know, I was glad when I saw the posters that you may have seen from defund.ca proposing to civic councillors, you know, ward by ward, oh, well, defund by 50%. Like, well, okay, well, now we're negotiating. But, of course, that might also not be realistic. But the layperson doesn't really know what's being spent enforcing what, which is where a lot of this comes down to, because I think there's a loss of faith in police. And I think that comes partly because people don't feel the connection that they should feel between democracy and policing, because it's democracy that makes the police legitimate. If there were no votes, there would be no legitimacy to the police force. And we're familiar with the part where we vote on the folks who make the laws, but I've been looking here and there for where my voice, just as a random person in society, has some bearing on how much is spent enforcing what. Because if we pass 1,000 laws, we spend all of our money enforcing 5 of them, that's still not really democracy, or if it's the other way around. There's 5 we don't spend on, we spend all our money enforcing the other, 995 laws. So we need a way for there to be democratic feedback about the budget. And I think a simple way to do that is to use something that's already come up just coincidentally in electoral politics recently, is ranked ballots. I just saw on the agenda this morning a piece about that. In fact, I'll put it in the chat here on YouTube, might as well link to it. But, you know, long before Stephen Del Duca was talking about it, I thought ranked ballots would be great for a lot of applications, and I think this would be one of them. And I think you could do it in a purely advisory capacity. The police should just publish, let's say monthly, hey, here are the 10 laws that were most expensive to enforce. And then the public could say, hey, I'm going to vote each month. I think you should swap 1 and 2, or I think I'm another voter. I think you should swap 10 and 11 because we'd be talking about not upending the whole system and just changing overnight what you spend enforcing what, because you want to make changes gradually and see the effect. So this would be a limited kind of ranked ballot where you'd be voting on a swap between two items in a ranked ordered list that's published every month so people know what their tax dollars are being spent on policing them. Because as far as I can tell, there is no such method. It's great that we have meetings like this and people can give deputations, but realistically, most people won't do this. Most people won't gain any understanding at any point in their lives of how much is being spent on one law versus another, and they'll either, some people will just fall into this polarized position of, well, we should abolish the police, and other people will say, no, like, it's always legitimate if something's a law, if it's a law, you enforce it, and end of discussion. Well, that doesn't make sense either. I've heard the city often make this kind of argument saying, well, we're enforcing X, Y, Z because it's illegal. Well, that doesn't explain anything because there's a lot of things that are illegal where the law is not enforced. And those decisions are being sort of, swept under the rug when really the people should have a say in that. And the conversation should be focused via a method like this, a public ranked ballot that's non-binding, advisory, let's say every month, about the police budget. So people can say, whoa, this month you spent how much on what kind of crime? And people should be able to say, both in their vote, and then it would fuel into the public discussion. They should say, no, we're spending way too much enforcing this, and we're spending not enough enforcing this. And I think the simplest way to do that is via a ranked ballot. I think you'll see more I'm talking about if you watch the piece that was just on the agenda on their YouTube channel. It came out this morning, I think. And you should talk to the experts who are on the panel there. Talk to Dave Meslin, talk to Unlock Democracy, and say, hey, look, we want to do ranked ballots on the police budget because it should be more democratic how we ultimately are voting on policing ourselves. And I will yield back the remainder of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Appreciate you coming to speak with us. Board members, any questions for Mr. Golding? Seeing none. Thank you again. Really appreciate it. Luby, next deputy.
Our last speaker is Chris. Chris, he's on mute now.
Yes, hello, thank you, Luby. Well, I have no problem with Mr. Golding's submissions right there. His comments being so far off topic from the expense report certainly indicate how it's a clear example of how the board chairs abuse their position to stifle free speech related to topics that interfere with the schemes of their corrupt masters, but they're quite willing to allow others to go on off topic without comment. But again, I certainly agree with a number of Mr. Golding's submissions on policing budgets in general. I also point out that both Derek and I, and of course others over time here, have made written submissions with links and quotes and things like that, yet the board claims that they're incapable of showing those on these remote conversations, these webcasts. So that also tends to limit speech, and certainly you should maybe consider freeing up the controls here so people can share screenshots. But of course the board, Mr. Hart and Mr. Teschner, have decided to limit free speech by preventing the public from submitting visual submissions along with their spoken conversations here. In the meantime here, we're on item 6, the expenses. And like Derek, I'm speaking in relation to this Ontario Board Association webcast expense for Ms. Wright. And I noticed that, again, on my last conversation, there still hasn't been any response with my repeated requests for how the board considers justification of those other legal expenses. So I have to assume that there is no justification other than Mr. Teschner and Mr. Torrey's membership as members of the Law Society. Regardless, on the question of vaccines, I note, of course, that this is a matter that Derek has raised with the board countless times in writing, and Mr. Hart has repeatedly refused to allow the board to address this and to have any public conversation regarding vaccines, vaccine enforcement, or policing vaccine, that is to say vaccine and vaccination of police officers. And yet we have Toronto Police Service News Release number 51276, dated October 21st, and that's from Chief Raymer saying vaccinations will be mandatory for all officers, and that officers that don't prove they're vaccinated will be removed from the force essentially, or sent on leave anyways, or maybe fired. And that's a communication from the Office of the Chief, the Corporate Communications. And in that news release, it specifically says that this is in regards to, quote, vaccination requirement aligns with Toronto Police Services Board policy. And I've looked, and there is no such policy. And as I mentioned, of course, Derek has repeatedly asked for the board to bring this before the public and before the board, the question of vaccines. And in fact, the board has repeatedly refused to fulfill its duty in this regard. And so I'd like to ask the chief, or through the board, get an answer from the chief. He stated that he is acting in regards to, quote, Police Services Board policy. So what is that policy? And given that there is no such policy, what is his legal justification as an employee of the board directing that other employees of the board do something that they don't want to, and that certainly a police chief has no right to order people to do? I refer back to the Police Services Act and Section 31(3), the responsibilities of the board, the restrictions. The board may give orders and directions to the chief, but not to other members of the police force, and no individual member of the board shall give orders or directions to any member of the police force. So while I'm sure that there are secret meetings happening where one member of the board goes off and chats with the chief in secret and says, oh, do this, we really want to violate people's rights, that doesn't qualify as a policy. And of course, we bring up over and over again Section 34 of the Police Services Act, or I should say, well, I'm not sure which section it is, sorry, that the board meetings must be open to the public as well. And of course, so if things are happening in private, then that is a violation of that act, and the requirement that everything the board does must be done for the public's knowledge and review. And as well, the board, Section 34 of the Police Services Act, under delegation.
You're at 5:20, so I have to wrap you up. I'll let you go 20 seconds over. Thank you very much for your deputation. Appreciate it.
Well, I hope I'll get a response this time, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for Mr. Langenfeld? Board members? No, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Langenfeld, for taking the time to talk to us today. Really appreciate it. Now take the item into the board for discussion. Board members, any questions on the item? Anyone wish to speak to it? Can I have a motion to receive item number 6, which is a semi-annual report publication of expenses? Motion to receive. Ms. Morgan, seconder. Ms. Kostakis, all in favor? Any opposed? Item number 6 carries. That was actually the last item held on our public agenda. So can I have before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I'll just let the public know that our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November the 23rd. We're continuing to monitor the City of Toronto, how they intend to conduct their public meetings. And as always, our focus will be on health and safety. And we will move forward with public meetings when the City of Toronto does. So stay tuned for that. So our next meeting is Tuesday, November the 23rd. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Ms. Kostakis, a seconder. Mr. Morgan, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.